everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm Mayang and I'm excited to present a journal article I review for our final sociolinguistics assignment. The title of the article is Acculturation and Attitudes Toward Code Switching, a bidimensional framework written by Odelia Yim and Richard Clement and published in the International Journal of Bilingualism in 2021. At first glance, the title may sound complex, but this study actually explores a simple yet meaningful question: how does a person's cultural identity influence the way they feel about switching between languages? As we live in a multilingual world, especially here in Indonesia, where many of us speak at least 2 or 3 languages, this topic is very relevant. We switch between languages every day, sometimes without even realizing it, and this study helps us understand the psychological and socio-cultural reason behind that behavior. It connects language attitude with cultural belonging and shows that language is more than just a tool, it's a part of our identity. Let's begin by discussing the background of the study. We know that code switching, which is when a person uses more than one language within a single conversation, is a normal part of communication for many bilinguals. For example, mixed language is common in places like Canada, Singapore, or Indonesia. However, people don't always see code switching the same way. Some view it negatively, thinking it shows a lack of fluency or laziness, and others see it positively as something flexible, creative, and culturally rich. The authors of this article were interested in why attitudes differ. They believe the answer lies in acculturation, which means the way someone adjusts to more than one culture, and more specifically, they look at bicultural identity integration, how people balance their original culture and the culture of the larger society. The study's main problem statement is that there hasn't been enough research that connect acculturation with language attitudes, particularly toward code switching, and this gap is important to fill because more people today are living between 2 or more cultures, and their language behavior reflects their inner cultural experience. And the next slide is methodology. Now let's look at how the research was conducted. The researchers used a quantitative survey method, meaning they collected numerical data from participants using structured questionnaires. They studied 226 bilingual university students in Canada, all of whom spoke both English and French. These participants were ideal because Canada officially supports both languages and many students naturally switch between them. To gather meaningful data, the researchers used 3 main measurement tools. The first is the bicultural identity orientation scale. This scale measures how participants view their relationship with both their heritage culture and the mainstream Canadian culture. Did they feel comfortable in both, or did they feel caught in between? The second is the Vancouver Index of Acculturation, and this tool assesses how much participants had adapted to both culture, including their values, behaviors, and emotional connection. And the last is the Attitudes Toward Code Switching questionnaire. This was specifically developed for the study and asked participants about their opinions on language mixing. Did they see it as acceptable, natural, or problematic? And after collecting responses, the researchers used regression analysis, a statistical method that helps identify relationship between different variables. This allowed them to find out how closely identity, cultural adaptation, and language attitudes were connected. Now, let's explore what the researchers found. And the key finding was that students who had well-integrated bicultural identity, meaning they felt at ease with both their heritage and mainstream cultures, had more positive attitudes toward code switching. They didn't see switching between languages as wrong or confusing. They saw it as normal and even beneficial. Another important finding was that students who had strong ties to their heritage culture, for example, the French-speaking or immigrant side of their identity, were more likely to support code switching. For them, code switching served as a bridge to preserve their original culture while adapting to Canadian life. The study also found that participants who felt less culture conflict, meaning they weren't struggling between two identities, were more tolerant of language mixing. They saw it as a way to express both sides of who they were. This research supports the idea that code switching is not just a linguistic choice, it's also a culture and psychological one. People who are confident in their identities use language freely without guilt or pressure. Those who are unsure may feel uncomfortable switching language even if they are fluent. The next slide is discussion. Let's now discuss the strength of the study. First, the study's design is scientifically strong. It uses reliable and valid scale from the fields of psychology and sociolinguistics. These tools have been used in other studies as well, which adds credibility to the result. The second is, this study offers a new and valuable perspective. Instead of only looking at how people speak, it looks at why they speak that way. By connecting code switching to personal identity and cultural adaptation, the authors show us that language is deeply tied to how we see ourselves. And the third, the research has real-world relevance in multicultural societies such as Canada, the US, or even Indonesia. Code switching is part of everyday life. Understanding how people feel about it helps educators, policymakers, and communities build better support systems for bilingual speakers. It also reminds us that being bilingual isn't just about knowing two languages. It's about navigating two worlds, and how well we feel accepted in this world shape the way we speak. And of course, no study without limitation. One major weakness is that the study focused only on Canadian university students who might not represent all bilingual people. Their experiences, education levels, and cultural environments are unique. Someone living in Mexico, Indonesia, or rural China might feel very differently about code switching. Another weakness is that the data came from self-report questionnaires. While surveys are useful, they really rely on what participants say, they think or do, not what they actually do in a real-life conversation. People might answer based on what seems polite, normal, or expected. Also, the study didn't look at specific situations where code switching happens. For example, people might code switch more at home than at work, or with friends more than strangers, including contextual details could help explain attitudes more accurately. Despite the limitation, the study still provides strong insight that can guide future research. And speaking of future research, these several recommendations. The first, future studies should involve more diverse groups. This could include immigrants, minority communities, older adults, or even children. Studying how different age group and cultural backgrounds experience code switching would give us a fuller picture. And the second, propose using qualitative methods such as interview, case studies, or ethnographic observation. These methods allow researchers to explore the real-life context where people switch languages. By watching or listening to how people speak in everyday life, we can better understand the emotional, social, and cultural reason behind their choices. The next slide is conclusion. To conclude, this article shows that code switching is more than just switching languages, it's about switching identities too. The way someone feels about code switching depends heavily on their sense of cultural belonging. If they feel accepted in both their heritage and mainstream culture, they are more likely to see code switching positively. But if they feel conflict or tension between cultures, they may be less open to language mixing. The study bridged the fields of sociolinguistics and cultural psychology, helping us understand that bilingualism is not just a mental ability, it's also a social and emotional experience. This is especially important in today's global world, where more people are growing up in multilingual environment. For us, as language learner, educators, or future researchers, this study reminds us that respecting identity is key to understanding language use. How we speak reflects who we are and how comfortable we are being ourselves. And the last part is reference. Here is the full reference for the article, and thank you for listening so patiently. I hope this presentation helped you see how deeply connected language and identity really are. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.